Bruin fans, fall is finally here. That means UCLA football is back in your life. Head out to the Rose Bowl to enjoy America's best tailgating and to make more unforgettable memories with the Bruins. Nico Iamaleava and the Bruins are ready to make an impact this year, and we need you cheering them at the Rose Bowl. Visit UCLABruins.com or call 310-UCLA-WIN to lock in your tickets today. 310-UCLA-WIN.
Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We're doing it live, doing more at 4. Weekday afternoons, right after Guy Benson and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with my pal Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com. And, of course, the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, KBC.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. Get the Dow 48K hats out. The Dow finishing above 48,000 for the first time ever, and indeed an all-time high, closing up more than 300 points today at 48,255. The S&P 500 managed a closing gain of 4 points, settling at 6,851. Tech names, though, coming under pressure again, and the Nasdaq closed down 62 points at 23,406. The yield in the 10-year note eased to 4.07%. That's the one that impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates. The volatility index moved up 1%. Gold hovering near $4,200 an ounce. Crude oil back below $59 a barrel. The Magnificent One, NVIDIA, at around 193 and change. Apple pulling back nearly 2 at 273 and change. More drama in Washington. They're trying to end the longest government shutdown in history, and a vote is set for this evening. Looks like there's some last-minute glitch here. We'll get the very latest from Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform, who has a front-row seat to all that in Washington. Looks like stock futures pointing lower as this drama plays out ahead of the opening bell tomorrow. A bill ending the record 43-day government shutdown looks set to be passed this evening following the Senate's approval. The House is set to vote this evening. The White House signaling President Trump would sign the measure pretty much immediately. The shutdown, as it turns out, did impact the financial markets. It's estimated to have long-reaching effects, with an analysis from the Congressional Budget Office suggesting that U.S. GDP could be roughly $11 billion lower by the end of next year. The Consumer Price Index and Jobs Report for October, set to be the key releases, impacted the major gauges, telling a mixed story today during trading. With a mixed finish today, the earnings parade continues. Cisco Systems stock is moving higher in extended hours today after topping Wall Street analyst expectations. Cisco shares moved up more than $2 at the bell at $73.96, up about $5 in after-hours trading. Circle Internet Group, that's one of the high flyers lately. Circle dropped about 10% as investor concerns over falling interest rates outweighed the company's strong earnings and revenue growth. What else is up, you ask? Well, the standard answer when somebody in L.A. asks you that, what's up? The correct response is, well, nothing but the rent, right? Is that still the case? We'll find out and get an update on what's happening with rents. And the city of L.A. now looking to overhaul its rent stabilization ordinance. We'll get an update on that and more later this hour from Daniel YUKELSON, Executive Director of the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, the government shutdown, and the whole works now. Joining me live, top-ranked money manager Ken WINANS, President and Chief Investment Officer at WINANS Investments at WINANSinvestments.com. Ken WINANS, also a market historian, author of numerous books, including Investment Atlas 1, 2, and 3, also Forbes magazine contributor. And he also has his crypto credentials. And the WINANS Money Minute, also running here now on 790 KBC. Ken WINANS, thank you very much for joining us live this afternoon.
Well, Frank, you and I both have these long resumes, but hopefully with that comes with the wisdom. And talk about long resumes. Who would have ever guessed the Dow Industrial Average, which everybody in our industry poo-poos is obsolete, doesn't tell you anything, doesn't make money, and here it is. In spite of the fact of, it has had fewer changes in a lot of the other industries, such as the S&P 500, which has become a revolving door of companies in and out, the Dow is literally just a few percentage points off the S&P 500 for the year. And it also raises the issue that you and I have talked about so many times, that a stock market is a market for stocks. And it's a lot more than the 7 tech stocks that are often discussed. And when you look at what was moving the day on the Dow, they were the financial stocks. Stocks like Nike were up. Disney was actually up. Industrials were up. So again, there is this grand distributing or re-asset allocating of portfolios that I think is going to go on throughout the rest of the year.
On there live with Ken Winans. The Wealth Minute reports are terrific here on 790 KBC. Ken, we look forward to hearing more of those here. And certainly a lot of wealth has been built this year with the Dow at record highs. I gave you a hat for your birthday. I have to commission a new Dow 48K hat now that the Dow is above 48,000. Quite a milestone here. Tech stocks, though, have come under pressure, and so have cryptos. Kind of a nervous time in cryptos. You have your crypto credentials, too. What is happening in the crypto space these days as you see it, and what's happening with the cryptos, too?
When in saying that, I'm also a technician, which means that I let price drive, the first foremost, the decision making. And I am concerned that, whether it's Bitcoin or it's Ethereum, both of them basically stalled. They've been in these trading patterns now for many, many months, and my concern is that they are beginning to break down past technical parameters that have, and basically for my case, I cut my exposure to Bitcoin. But here's the thing that's so interesting, Frank. When you look at this year overall, and I'm going to, because I've had more talks about, the constant barrage of news about the bear market is coming, that the stock market cannot handle all that's been thrown at it this year, and with the government shutdown being the final straw, well, that might be true, but if that is the case, that we're getting ready for economic calamity, why is the dollar basically stable through all this? The dollar index, which is a basket of currencies that trade against the fiat dollar, the dollar is down about 7% on the year, hardly catastrophic, trading well within its range. I mean, as you commented, cryptos have been all over the map this year. They've been going crazy. And you have gold, silver, and platinum, and copper for that matter. I'm going to throw the big metals in there, continuing to move up. So it's a very mixed picture. And I would just caution everybody to be very, very careful about making investment decisions based on op-eds and political papers, and certainly even on just basic headlines.
On there live with top-ranked money manager Ken Winans, and it's not over quite yet. This government shutdown, it's expected to be over by tonight. Following this latest drama, we'll be getting an update live from Washington later this hour. But certainly the airlines have seen a lot of turbulence in the face of all this. And we saw the head of Delta Airlines today saying the airlines turned out to be a political football during this shutdown, creating headaches for you probably, Ken, because you're a big traveler, and of course all the other folks who rely on air travel. What about the airline stocks in all this? And as we approach the holiday season here, give us your thoughts here as this government shutdown winds down and hopefully air travel gets back to normal.
Frank, I was actually somebody who ended up getting stuck out from Denver to Vegas this last week. So I had a pretty good taste of what it was, and I actually decided to cut my trip short because of what they were talking about is Friday's big cutback on air travel. It is going to take time to get all this back to normal. I would just say this. We're going to be flying blind, excuse the pun, but it's true, throughout the rest of this quarter, and I dare say even into Q1, when it comes to government statistics, even industry statistics from government agencies. I think it's going to take time for us to be able to call that reliable data yet again. I mean, you talked about in the report before you brought me on about inflation. I don't think you can really trust a lot of the data coming out of the government right now, very similar to what we dealt with during COVID. And for that matter, going back to 2008, 2009. There's a time when you can trust government statistics. It's usually within normalcy. You don't have it right now. And so you've got to use some common sense as an investment goes of whether or not it makes sense to buy these stocks. One reason I could give a positive for airline stocks is that fuel prices are way down. What usually really hits those stocks is when they're paying a fortune for fuel cost. That's not the case. And also, a lot of the airlines, they've reconfigured their cabins. Now, I personally don't like the new seats that I have to fly in. I'm a fairly big guy, but they are clearly figuring out ways to put more people into a plane and to get them where they need to go. So I think that we might be surprised that if they really do get back on track, at least to some degree, I think the holiday season probably will not be as bad as everybody's predicting, which, by the way, Frank, I just want to throw this in there. almost every article today, I was reading the major publications and watching financial media, talked about how awful this holiday season was going to be for retailers. Well, again, I'm going to throw this out. Okay, that's fine. Government statistics, all these things going on. Well, if that is the case, then why were restaurants and retailers some of the best performing stocks today? And almost all of the major retailers that I track are way up on the year. So again, I think people need to look at what's going on with the stocks themselves and differentiate it from people's opinions of the stocks they might read in the press.
On there live with top-ranked money manager Ken Winans. And Ken, now that the government shutdown is winding down, attention once again focused on the U.S. Supreme Court with that hearing recently regarding President Trump's tariffs and whether they will be valid and whether the Treasury will have to refund potentially $1 trillion in tariff money. How do you see that playing out, and what's your assessment of what happened recently at the Supreme Court, and now we await a decision there?
You know, I think it's going to be like everything else we've seen with court battles this year. There's going to be probably some give and take. Now, I'm by no means a trade lawyer or a trade expert, but I would just say this. If it was so dire and so draconian, why is the market up? Why is the Dow hitting a new high? I just thought, I mean, there might be some volatility and some disruptions. There's probably going to be some give or take about, you know, probably that Congress is going to have to, I can imagine a situation like this, Frank. The Supreme Court says, hey, the Congress is going to have a say on trade treaties. I mean, we're not going to go on this executive emergency power anymore. Some of these treaties are going to have to go to Congress to be ratified. So then we're going to get into a congressional fight on that. But I don't think we're necessarily going to see the $1 trillion of the federal coffers suddenly just get drained during the remainder of this year. I think it's like everything else. There's going to be hits, there's going to be misses, and we'll see where it comes out. But Frank, Mottek, I tell you that, we talk about Santa Claus rallies and year-end rallies. I mean, here we are with all that's happening, and November's basically up, even with the pullback in some of the real fancy stocks. Everything is generally looking pretty positive when you look at the stock market. There was one other report out. It was trying to tell I couldn't believe I was reading this, trying to tell American investors that they should literally sell off their U.S. stocks and buy foreign stocks. Oh, really? Go take a look at what's going on in other parts of the world. I don't think that makes a lot of sense for the average American. But again, there's these extremes that are still hovering around out there, and people just need to stay the course.
And in some cases, it's full steam ahead, especially for the U.S. Navy, it looks like, with this military buildup around Venezuela. We're speaking a day after Veterans Day 2025. I want to belatedly salute you, Ken Winans, being a veteran yourself, and we're watching the military moves in the Caribbean. And obviously, Venezuela, a big oil producer with close ties to China as well as Iran and Cuba and so forth. Everybody's watching what's happening there. What are your thoughts here if something does happen there with U.S. military action in Venezuela, and what might that do to energy prices? And are you keeping an eye on all that?
Yes, I am. And I'm a historian by my nature, so I do go back and look at, I remember distinctly when we invaded the island of Grenada during the Reagan administration, or if you want to go way back to even the Cuban Missile Crisis, and certainly that was, on the edge of nuclear war. We're nowhere near those situations. But I can tell you that after what we saw happen within the Middle East, the fact that whatever happened, it was a short-term burp to our stock market that recovered very quickly. I think it would be the same thing here. Again, at the end of the day, it's another reason why U.S. stocks, to me, look so much more compelling than trying to jump into all these different parts of the world. We've talked about it before many times, Frank. One of my concerns is that we don't nearly talk enough about this hemisphere. And there's a lot of things that are going on. There's been, whether you're talking about things that are happening in Peru, Venezuela, certainly the whole mess in Argentina, we're trying to stabilize that region. And I think in the net end, it's going to be good for things overall. It's a very important region, and it's something that as we move forward over the next century, regionally, things are going to be very important to us. Same as it is with Mexico and with Canada. They both need those regions as well. So again, I don't think it's going to be something that would make me rush out and sell my stocks, but I will tell you that what it is having an effect on, and it's another big reason why I'm not a big worry, or I don't have big worries about inflation. It's commodities. Though that region is a massive, you mentioned oil, But when you talk about all the commodities that come out of Central and South America, when I'm talking about, and I'm talking about primarily agricultural commodities, you're seeing a lot of dramatic swings right now, both up and down in the commodity picture. And, prices are falling in a lot of the key commodities that come out of those South American countries. So you could say that might be a negative on stabilizing those regions. But again, you're finding good and bad and ugly almost everywhere you turn.
On there live with Ken Winans. Any specific places here at Ken Winans with the Dow at a record high here today where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Well, here's a couple of things. Number one, I'm fully invested right now. I am playing the seasonal norms of November, December, January, going back to 1970. I wish I had these odds playing the tables in Vegas because I would make a gazillion dollars. But I think you need to, one, you don't want to have a bunch of money sitting around right now. Number two, don't necessarily park it in tech. Begin to diversify. I like the retailers. I mean, again, with all the hubbub about how this retail season is going to be bad, I'm looking at things like Dillard's up 40% on the year. It had an okay day. Ross Stores was up today. Target was up today. TJ Maxx, Walmart, Costco, they all look reasonably stable, and I think they're going to have a good holiday season. So again, I would just say that, play the Santa Claus rally. People are going to be buying retailers. I think also keep an eye on what's going to be coming out of Amazon. Certainly they're a big retailer. And last but not least, everybody keeps saying, is it the end for commodities? Is it the end of the gold run? All I can tell you is when I look at the commodity stocks, and I'm talking across the board, whether it's steel, whether it's aluminum, whether it's gold, they had a heck of a great day and a heck of a great year. I would strongly suggest take a look at some of the raw material. Doesn't have to be rare earths. Go look at the basic plays that we need in this country. And again, it's an area that most people are way under diversified in.
All right, before I let you off the hook here, Ken Winans, if you can put on your real estate hat here for just a second here, because you also have a real estate index, and it's been described as the most complex housing market, certainly in decades. President Trump trying to pump things up with the proposal of a 50-year mortgage. Now, what are your thoughts on that idea, and what do you see on the real estate front?
Well, here's the problem with a 50-year mortgage is that unless it's assumable, you really can't pass that mortgage on to your kids, especially if you're an older home builder. The real estate stocks have been punished all year. A lot of it was tied to tariffs, the home builders themselves. But yet, with that being said, I'm looking at Pulte Home, which is symbol PHM, is actually up 11% on the year. It's about at the same rate as the Dow. So again, I think that real estate has always been a regional play. It's going to continue to be that way. And all I can tell you is that with rates coming down, especially going into the spring season next year, I actually think there will be a fair number of people who might say if they have good credit, again, this is the key thing, you're a strong buyer, you've made some money in the stock market, you can take money out of your 401k for a first-time home purchase. I actually am optimistic that if rates continue to come down, mortgage rates continue to come down, and the banks are still very comfortable with liquidity, I think we could see in stronger regions of the country a pretty good home market.
Well, terrific, Ken. Thank you very much for covering all the bases here this afternoon on what turned out to be another record-shattering day for the stock market, and always appreciate it. Been speaking to Ken Winans with WinAnsInvestments.com, also a market historian. His books include Investment Atlas 1, 2, and 3, also Forbes magazine contributor. Again, congratulations on your Morningstar 5-star rankings, Ken, and look forward to listening to you here on the Winans Wealth Minutes here on 790 KABC. Look forward to speaking with you again, I hope, next week, and thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank. You have a good evening, and I appreciate it.
Thank you very, very much. And let's get out to the freeways now on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KABC. Winning day for the stock market with the Dow closing at an all-time high of more than 300 points, of 327 at 48,255. Yep, you heard me. The Dow above 48,000 for the very first time, closing at a record high. The S&P 500 of 4 at 6,851. The NASDAQ slipping 62 at 23,406 as some more air came out of the high-flying AI names, including NVIDIA, which has had a rough week, but today managed a closing gain of 64 cents at 193 and change. Apple down nearly 2 at 273.47. After the closing bell, Cisco coming out with better than expected earnings. That tech bellwether had closed up 2.25 today at 73.96, is up about $5 in after-hours trading. Shares of Circle Internet Group, the second largest stablecoin issuer these days, pulling back $12 at 86.30. This as the cryptos continue to bounce around. Bitcoin closer to 100,000 again, right now at 101,557. Ethereum at 3408, Solana at 153, and Doge at 17 cents. Analog gold right now just below 4,200, down 15 and change to 4,198.10. Silver at 53.26, near its all-time high. Crude oil futures pulling back again today, down 21 cents at the moment at 58.28 a barrel. And now the latest news on 790 KABC.
AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.
Bruin fans, fall is finally here. That means UCLA football is back in your life. Head out to the Rose Bowl to enjoy America's best tailgating and to make more unforgettable memories with the Bruins. Nico Iamaleava and the Bruins are ready to make an impact this year, and we need you cheering them at the Rose Bowl. Visit UCLABruins.com or call 310-UCLA-WIN to lock in your tickets today. 310-UCLA-WIN.
Family Matters amplifies the loudest and the proudest political voices in the Black community today.
What's up, guys? I'm CJ Pearson. There's so many incredible perspectives here in the Black community that you're going to hear from each and every week.
Because faith matters, country matters, and family matters.
This is exactly what the mainstream media was missing by not actually going to Black churches, going to Black barbershops, talking to the people at the forefront of this change in the community. Let me start here.
Family Matters with CJ Pearson.
Each and every week. We'll see you here. Talk to you soon.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Mottek On Money continues, 790 KABC. The drama continues in Washington, trying to end the longest government shutdown in U.S. history, which has impacted air travel, SNAP benefits, food stamp benefits, and the list goes on. The bill that would provide an end to the political funding stalemate set to be voted on any minute now. Looks like the House has returned to get the job done here, returning to Washington for a vote tonight on the Senate amended bill to reopen the government, which would end the federal shutdown that has now continued for 43 days. President Trump, we're told, is standing by, ready to sign what comes out of this. Let's get the very latest on the front line there in Washington. Joining us live now is Grover Norquist, the president of Americans for Tax Reform. Grover, thank you again for coming to the line and keeping us well informed. Give us the latest on what's happening there now.
Well, the Republicans have a very narrow margin majority in the House, and they expect to have the votes to pass it. Should be tonight. But I would not be surprised if somebody decides, no, I can't give you my vote until X, and wants something extra, maybe something that's too much. And the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, is not as well known in the country as he should be, because he really has managed the House of Representatives with a very narrow Republican majority. Only 2 or 3, some earlier on, 4 people could wander off mad about something, but nothing that had to do with this bill, and I'm not voting for you, and get a lot of attention, go on TV. He has been able to keep together the modern Republican Party in the House. I assume that is what will happen today as well. It would get bounced till tomorrow if somebody has to be talked to at great length about how to get this done. But the bottom line is the Democrats have agreed that they will do a continuing resolution until end of January. That means we're not going to have another holdup in the middle of Christmas or during Thanksgiving. And the Democrats don't have a majority in the House or the Senate, so they don't get to win. This is very problematic. They're not very happy about this. And what happens now, as soon as this bill passes is we get ready for end of January when we try and do budgets through the year, which the Republicans did largely this year. The Democrats have agreed, actually, in a few cases, to actually do ordinary, usual budget process where the defense budget is worked on and then the agriculture budget is worked on and passed separately. And that's the way it was always being done until the Democrats lost control of Congress in 1994. And they haven't really had much control of Congress. So instead of working through the normal process that Republicans and Democrats worked on up until 1994, they say, we don't want to do a budget. We want one big pile of spending. And we have 41 votes, so we can filibuster. So that gives us clout in the Senate. So we can help determine what's in the budget more than if you actually tried to do it on what makes sense. And Republicans and Democrats in each committee worked on it. So that's going to continue to be a challenge for the Democrats. They find this very annoying not to be in charge. They don't quite know how to deal with it. They're more left of center members are screaming at the leadership whenever the leadership tries to do something reasonable. It's very unpleasant. It's not something that we can fix. They're going to have to work this out themselves. But we start now on the discussion of why were the Democrats holding things hostage? They said it was because they wanted $500 billion in subsidies to cover over the failures of Obamacare. That Obamacare, remember we were told by Obama that we would all see our premiums, our insurance premiums, reduced by $2,500. In fact, they more than doubled. They didn't go down, they went up. They didn't go up a little, they went up a lot. All this discussion about affordability, the thing that's gotten the least affordable is health care since Obamacare passed. Obamacare requires you, me, everyone, you have to be insured for these list of things. Well, some of them you can't even get. Some of them I don't want to be insured for. I might want a different kind. Nope. There's one size fits all. That's it. Actually, there are like 3 sizes you can do. But that's it. That's all. And the government's got all this control over it. And, of course, that's massively expensive. And the more you subsidize something with government money, the higher the prices rise. Surprise, surprise. That's what happens with college. That's what happens with K through 12 education. The more money that goes in, the more expensive these projects become. And healthcare has been priced out of a lot of people's reach, largely because of Obamacare. And that's the fight we have in the next year. The Democrats will go, we should subsidize the failures of Obamacare to cover them up. And Republicans are going to say, let's have some alternatives. Health savings accounts is a big one. Trade association healthcare. There are religious groups that get together and do healthcare together. We need lots of different approaches, not one government approach. And that's what Obamacare was, and that failed. It didn't work. It's not working. And throwing more money at it, which is the Democrat answer, will make it worse, not better.
You're live with Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform, live with us from Washington. So we're watching this drama play out right now. It looks like House lawmakers took issue with a provision that's being discussed here now that allows senators to seek damages of $500,000 if federal investigators collect their phone records without their knowledge as part of an investigation. The provision seen as designed to help 8 senators whose records were obtained as part of former special counsel Jack Smith's investigation into President Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Is this flying the Chardonnay, you think, going to hold things up tonight?
That's interesting. I can't imagine why they would object. It's clearly not legal what the FBI did and spying on senators and congressmen. And do they want it extended to the congressmen that were spied on? There were 400 groups or more that were spied on for no particular reason other than they disagreed with the president. I mean, there's a massive misuse of the FBI and of the intelligence agencies to go after the political enemies of Biden. And of course, once you do that sort of, you're just sifting through to see what can we find, what would be interesting. And when you subpoena this stuff, that the person attacked has to get a lawyer, that costs money. you can bankrupt a group with an investigation. No charges, just an investigation. They did this under Clinton. They did this to a lot of groups. I was spared. My group, Americans for Tax Reform, we weren't gone after because I was sitting on the commission overseeing the IRS.
Wow.
So they left me alone. But they went after the National Rifle Association. I mean, the Clinton people just used the IRS as their personal vendetta machine, as did Obama and now Biden. So that's what we're finding. I don't know what the objection in the House would be by Republicans to saying, yes, you should be able to get damages from the people who did this. I think the best thing to do is do an investigation, get it all laid out, and anybody involved needs to be fired.
Very interesting. Well, that is the latest wrinkle there, so we'll continue to monitor what's happening there as this vote is expected tonight, and the government shutdown is supposed to end tonight with the president's signature once they pass all this. In the meantime, since we last spoke, I wanted to ask you, President Trump today saying he is committed to the $2,000 tariff dividend payment that he advanced this idea recently. What do you think of that? And, of course, in the meantime, the Supreme Court is deciding whether the tariffs are, in fact, legal and whether the Treasury may have to refund $1 trillion in tariff money at some point. The president advancing the $2,000 tariff dividend idea.
I'm not quite sure why he thinks that makes sense. There may be something he's trying to get to. We don't have $2,000. We have a deficit. Where's money? What money? Whatever money has come in has been spent, for crying out loud. I mean, you can't talk about spending you don't have. So I wish you wouldn't do. I don't know the point he's trying to make, so I don't mean to criticize it. But to say you're going to hand money back to people, I'm sorry, it's gone. It doesn't exist. There is no such money. And as you point out, if the Supreme Court is going to strike down many of the tariffs that were put up, not all of them, but those tariffs that were just willy-nilly, where you say that 10% against that country and 20% against this country, the Constitution is very clear. Only Congress does tariffs and taxes. Only Congress, House, and then the Senate. Now, the Congress gave the president the power, this is what Trump was using, to target individual countries that misbehave and attack us. But you have to do a whole bunch of paperwork to make the case. This is what we're objecting to. This is what they did wrong. This is what we're responding to. You can't just, pass a tax increase. And Reagan used that power in the 80s. He gave a very good speech, which the Canadians played on TV, I guess, the other day, where he said, this is why in this targeted one case, we're putting tariffs on the Japanese. And then he went on to point out that tariffs are a bad idea in general. You don't want them to stick around. This is temporary. It's just Japan. It's just this industry. And with that basis, that's why it's legal, because the Congress did grant to the president that kind of power. And some of what the president has wanted to do is to use that power. That will withstand Supreme Court judgment. But the broad-based stuff, you have to get Congress to do that for you.
Grover, thank you very much. Wish we had more time, but we'll have to stop there. Keep the popcorn out. It's going to be an interesting evening, and look forward to your updates here. Thank you very much. Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC.
Hey, Bruin fans, want to go behind the scenes with your favorite teams and athletes? How about getting exclusive merch and opportunities to enter sweepstakes like sideline access at the Rose Bowl? Introducing Blue and Gold Society, UCLA Athletics fan membership program created to support Bruin student athletes. Members receive benefits like exclusive gear, videos featuring insider stories, and incredible experiences courtesy of UCLA Athletics. Sign up today at blueandgoldsociety.com.
What's up, guys? David Pollack here, former Georgia Bulldog, former analyst with College Game Day, and host of my new show, See Ball, Get Ball. I'm a defensive lineman. That's why that's the name. You see the ball, you go get it. We're going to dive deep into college football. We're going to break down film. We'll have bold takes, real conversations with the biggest names in the sport every single week. If you eat, sleep, and breathe college football like I do, man, I promise you, See Ball, Get Ball is for you. So do me a favor. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Mottek On Money continues, 790 KABC. What's happening with apartments and rents these days? Well, the LA City Council making news, approving an update to what's called the Rent Stabilization Ordinance in Los Angeles. Looks like they've come up with some sort of a new formula that will set allowable increases in rents for about 650,000 units in the city at 4% and remove additional charges for power and gas. Big changes to this policy, the biggest in decades. Let's get the latest on all this and what it means to you. Let's bring in Daniel YUKELSON now, the Executive Director of the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. Daniel YUKELSON, thanks very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Frank.
Wonderful to have you with us again. And first of all, your reaction to what just happened there at the LA City Council.
Well, it's just a devastating day for rental housing providers in the city of LA. The city's trying to protect supposed rent burden tenants by pushing a lot of private property owners out of business. And the majority of these private property owners that provide badly needed rental housing are independent small owners who depend on these buildings for their income. Yet they're going to have to dip into savings to keep these buildings afloat. There's no way that many of them who are at or below break even today are going to survive over the next 3 to 5 year period. It's just going to have a horrific impact on the availability and quality of housing throughout the city.
Does this impact all apartments or just the old ones? Maybe you can educate us on how this rent stabilization ordinance works and which places would be impacted by this.
So properties that were built prior to October 1st, 1978 are subject to the city of LA's rent control regime. And those properties are now going to have limited rent increases. They won't even be able to keep up with inflation because the maximum increase is stubbed off at 90% of the CPI with a maximum of 4% and a floor of 1%. And on top of that, owners who have priced their units because they are also paying for gas and or electricity for tenants have had the rugs pulled out underneath them, and they're no longer going to be able to pass through those charges. And if tenants add additional adult occupants to a unit, owners aren't going to be able to charge an additional 10%, which they've been allowed to do for several decades now. So this is a severe decrease led by a bunch of socialist clowns on the city council who don't believe in private property rights.
Anything in there for the apartment owners? Was something about increasing funding for repairs and rehabilitation measures. What else? If you can dig through this, what else is there?
The city council said they're going to try to provide some kind of funding up to $1,500 for projects that could cost tens of thousands of dollars. And owners would have to apply with a mountain of paperwork and try to get some money out of a city that has a huge budget deficit. Good luck. It's just window dressing that really doesn't exist for property owners.
Yeah, and of course, we were speaking during the pandemic days when various rent measures were put in place. Anything new on that front? I know you had in court challenged a lot of it, putting the onus on the apartment owners. And was there any reimbursement, and where do things stand with that?
No, we are still pushing those lawsuits through. In fact, we filed a new lawsuit to challenge the city's rent stabilization ordinance on constitutional grounds, and we have a couple of our members that are plaintiffs in that lawsuit, and we are pushing that forward. And you know, the goal with our lawsuits is to rush through the court system in California because we never get a fair hearing for property owners. And so we're trying to get all of our cases, and there's 4 of them outstanding today, into the hands of the Supreme Court as fast as we can, where we feel like we'll get a fair hearing. But in California, there's no fair hearing.
I have noticed more, not only for lease signs out there, but for sale signs on a lot of buildings, commercial as well as residential, and certainly multifamily apartment buildings and so forth. Is that what you're seeing out there?
Yeah, people are bailing today. Commercial property is very difficult to rent. In fact, on the residential side, we've seen a lot of tenants just leave the city of Los Angeles or leave the LA area. And so we have a much higher vacancy factor today. And in fact, ironically, we're seeing rents get pushed down. There's a 5% vacancy factor when historically it's been about 2%. And so owners have had to provide incentives and rent discounts in order to secure tenants. And so it's just an awful market for property owners. And at the same time, we're seeing costs go up very rapidly. The insurance industry here in California is in a major crisis, and we're seeing people paying 2 to 3 times what they used to pay for property insurance and getting, less coverage. And so it's a much greater risk to be in the rental housing business today.
Wow. So vacancies up, even though we saw all those homes and apartments destroyed in the horrific firestorm in January. That's another factor here, right? But despite that, and you would think that there would be even more demand for housing, given the fact that thousands of places were destroyed. What impact are you seeing following that firestorm and the slow recovery that we're seeing here?
Well, to be honest with you, Frank, where I'm standing right now in Santa Barbara County, we see a huge influx of people, and property values have actually spiked here in the Santa Barbara County area. That's where people are going. They're getting out of LA County. It's just the quality of life there has gone down drastically, and the safety that people feel when they're walking out on the streets today is terrible. So they're moving to counties like Orange County, Riverside, San Bernardino, and Santa Barbara County, Ventura County, just to get out of that area and these terrible politicians and their poorly managed government.
Where are the bargains now? Of course, the old joke that I said at the beginning of this program is when you ask somebody in L.A. what's up, the standard answer is nothing but the rent. But it sounds like that has changed now. Tell us more about how rents have come down in any areas where you see bargains here.
Well, a lot of the is also impacted by the economy. We had the entertainment industry go out on strike, and a lot of our film and television production has just left the area, so people don't have jobs, and they've moved on. They just can't afford to live in the LA area anymore, and owners are screaming. It's very, very challenging to get people to rent their properties today, and so there are some bargains out there. Rents have come down a little bit, and so especially in certain areas. It is spotty around the city. Some areas are still holding okay, but in other areas, like in East Hollywood and areas around downtown, there's a huge vacancy factor. And so if renters are looking, now's the time. They can get a great deal.
Daniel YUKELSON, thank you very much for that important update this afternoon, and we'll keep an open line to you on all the other outstanding issues out there affecting a lot of people and apartment owners as well as renters out there. Daniel YUKELSON, the Executive Director of the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. Always great to speak with you. Thank you very much for joining us live this afternoon.
All right. Thanks, Frank. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you very, very much. We got a record-shattering day on Wall Street with the Dow at a record high at the close today of 327 points, closing above 48,000 for the first time, 48,255. The S&P 500 of 4 at 6,851. The NASDAQ slipped 62 at 23,406 as some of the tech names continued under pressure. And the yield on the 10-year note now at 4.07%. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang. I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon right here on Mottek On Money, 790 KBC.
Bruin fans, fall is finally here. That means UCLA football is back in your life. Head out to the Rose Bowl to enjoy America's best tailgating and to make more unforgettable memories with the Bruins. Nico Iamaleava and the Bruins are ready to make an impact this year, and we need you cheering them at the Rose Bowl. Visit UCLABruins.com or call 310-UCLA-WIN to lock in your tickets today. 310-UCLA-WIN.